Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Friday, and all of our guests today are brought to you by our friends in Port Alberni and Campbell River, Quinsam Communications Group, sponsors of Is It Just Me as well. Let me see if I can do this here. We've had a few submissions talking with the Capitals in town as Thomas Drance waits on me to figure out if I can do this. But a lot of people talking about that Eastern Conference playoff race for the second wild card. And there are people talking about, and they're one point out, the Islanders are involved, Detroit, the Capitals, the Sabres, the Devils, Pittsburgh's in there as well. This would be a perfect time or a perfect example of why the play-in format, the play-in tournament that the NBA has, that a lot of people are talking about the NHL adopting, would be a pretty good idea. As it is, it's pretty interesting right now. Capitals and Canucks at Rogers Arena tomorrow. Here to talk about that and more from The Athletic, Thomas Drance. How are you, sir?
Gentlemen, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Dollars up, collars up.
What's with the collar up? I don't get it.
I don't know. It's like a fleece. You wouldn't wear it like that.
Yeah, go with the collar up. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
no, put it down. Put it down.
No, it's
Thomas,
good.
Thomas.
No, collars up.
You're not the Fonz on Happy Days. Put it down.
I don't even know if the dollar's up. Or would you be a fan of the play-in format that the NBA has for the National Hockey League?
I'm a big fan of the play-in format. I think it's an obvious change that the league should make. I think it creates more incentive, more meaning throughout the season. Even things like holding off Vegas, for example, if you're the LA Kings, right? The difference between being fourth in a division and being third would be massive. And, the play-in NBA games are that's two of my favorite days in sports, honestly, of the year. First of all, I love single game elimination hockey, right? It's one of my absolute favorite things. And I think that, being 7th to 10th in a conference, to me, it's not a huge difference. We want to see Ovechkin play a meaningful game after game 82, don't we? We want to see teams think about the Boudreaux Canucks, right? That team deserved, in my view anyway, to at least play, at least have a shot to play their way in, given the way they finished. The way the NHL standings work, especially with the loser points and how hard it is to gain ground, we know it. We've seen it 2 consecutive years in this market prior to the season. You fall behind early, you're dead in the water. I think giving teams a lever like this, a chance to play their way in, would sort of buttress the fact that the NHL standings don't really make sense as they're currently devised in terms of creating in-season drama. And then here's the last part. It would give division winners a huge advantage, right? Yeah. The whoever wins the conference is playing a team in game 1 that's played 84 games. Whoever's second is playing a team in the first round that's played 83 games. There's a meaningful rest advantage to winning the division. Better rewarding the teams at the top, giving teams that struggle out the gate more of a chance to compete later into the season, and creating an additional television product that I think everyone would be excited about. I don't see the downside except for that old hardo purity of we don't need to change anything. Yeah. And I get that. I'm sensitive to that because I love the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But fundamentally, you're still going to have that. Yeah. You're still going to have 16 teams playing best of 7. The way the NBA does it, where the 6th and 7th team or the 7th and 8th team play one, winner goes into the playoffs. Loser plays the winner of the 9-10 teams. And then the winner of that makes the playoffs. I think that's a perfect design, and I think it would be amazing if they did it in hockey.
Well, you mentioned the TV numbers. I think this is just a matter of time because, an extra game or two. It's revenue. It's more revenue. I think it's going to happen.
Plain and simple.
Okay, Capitals in town. The Canucks with a change. Myers comes back. Do you understand why Noah Juulsen looks like he's going to be sitting out with Zadorov moving to the right side?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think this is Vancouver's sixth best defenseman. And Juulsen's played really well. That's not a knock on Juulsen by any means. His penalty killing has been crucial for this team, especially his defensive play. you've seen him be more assertive, carrying the puck, doing a lot of good things. So it's not really a knock on him so much as, Vancouver's got some decent depth in terms of a variety of guys that should be in the lineup on a regular basis. And I think Juleson, it belongs among that group, but is kind of fifth among that group of prospective second and third pair guys. I'd add this. I think this Canucks team needs offense as much as they need defensive play. Myers is a better bet, in my view, to help you, attack against the grain, do some of that surfing stuff he does in transition play quickly, which is one of his strengths when he's on his game. And he produces points. I mean, before his injury, he had a real shot at hitting like a 35-point season. I think he could get to 30 still. That's the sort of push that I think Vancouver needs more of from their back end. Once you have Zadorov and Myers on the second and third pair, respectively, I think you have a better shot of getting some of that like supporting blue line offense, that supporting blue line push through the neutral zone, which I think this Canucks team is short on, given that they've loaded up Hronek and Hughes on the same pair and desperately need.
Hey, Thomas, Philip Hronek, talking a lot about him and his contract situation. What are your thoughts? What's he asking for, and where's this going to end up?
Yeah, I can't give you like insider details on what he's asking for, but I do think the $8 million range is at least fair. That number that Saravalli's been predicting and chatting about, Frank Saravalli, of course, of Daily Faceoff, I think that's compelling. And this is one of the things you have to be aware of. Like, players have unique leverage in a position like Hronek, right? He's arbitration eligible, which gives him a pretty significant, arrow in his quiver. We saw how that played out with Brock Besser's situation a couple of years ago. He doesn't have the high QO, but it doesn't really matter when you've got such a open shut arbitration case as, a top 10 defenseman in this league over the course of the past season. That platform year is a big one. And, we'll see. Ultimately, I think it's going to come down to what the player wants, right? There's definitely an opportunity to maximize his income coming off of this year. And then the Canucks will have a decision. Is that with them or is that elsewhere? I think the club, I don't think the club would like to keep Hronek, and they'd like to keep him long-term. That was a controversial trade they made, criticized by me, criticized by both of you gentlemen, and it's worked out really well.
Stop. Criticized by you and him. I did not rip the team for that. Don't put me in.
You don't rip the team for anything.
Stop. Don't put me in that category, Thomas. You should have said criticized by me and Don.
No, by Thomas and me.
Yeah. So, anyways,
when I did that hit after the trade, we were all critical of the trade.
No, I didn't. Well, I was not ripping it.
I'll pull up the receipts. Just
no. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, commence.
I'm very serious. You were like, I agree with you, and like stuff like that during that hit. You were critical of the trade.
We got to find that.
Give your head a shake, Thomas. I never said that. It was you and Don. We were the two most.
We took the most heat for it.
That's it.
But I don't remember what you said.
I'll go watch the hit that I did in the wake of the trade. But I remember it being pretty much consensus between the three of us that we were like, I don't know.
You two went over the line.
Thomas, you have to have more going. You have to have more going on the weekend. You have to have more going on the weekend than looking at old Donnie and Dolly shows.
No. Finish your thoughts.
Because if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. I'll say to Rick, my bad. Anyway, this trade's worked out well. One thing to keep in mind is, I do think there's something of a tentpole effect when a team makes a trade that works out like this, especially when they're criticized for it. They tend to be pretty loath to lose that player, right? Like the success of Hronek is sort of a key part of their accomplishment, a key part of their contribution in turning this season around. I find it hard to believe that the Canucks would be anything but in the business of keeping Hronek here for a long time. And ultimately, I think it's going to be sort of in the player's court. What does he want here? A long-term deal with this franchise where he's fit in well, or to maximize his income on his third contract? I think both are totally fair approaches for a player to take. I'm not going to be critical of a guy either way. But that's sort of the dynamic here, and it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out, whether or not it gets done down the stretch or lingers into the summer.
Okay, and Thomas, very, very quickly, what the hell happened on Wednesday? blowing that 3-0 lead at home. I know Colorado's good, but that's not supposed to happen.
It's not, but I don't think Vancouver was 3-0 good at any point in that game. You know what I mean? I don't think they were full value necessarily for their lead. I don't think Colorado had played poorly in the first two periods. I think what Vancouver did do well in the first 40 minutes that completely disappeared was they did the same things that they'd done on their winning streak going into that game. Colorado couldn't break out. They couldn't get clean looks on passes into the slot. They just couldn't generate, even though, Vancouver might have been fortunate to be up 3-0. I think they were, they should have been leading, and Colorado definitely shouldn't have gotten a goal. And then obviously Colorado took it over. And I think the only thing that the Canucks need to sort of ask themselves is why did we lose our composure? What can we do to make sure that doesn't happen again? Because the type of hockey we saw them play in the third period, how completely overwhelmed they were. That's not what we've seen from this team. And that's sort of one thing that doesn't worry me too much about it, right? It's like we haven't seen this team look that overmatched. Yeah. In that particular way frequently enough for me to be like, and that's the real team. I haven't seen that. That didn't even look like the Minnesota game where the Wild came back, but the Canucks played pretty well. Like, those weren't bounces. The Avs just completely throttled them. And that's not the DNA of this team and hasn't been at any point this season. So I'm not going to pick an outlier period and sort of make too big a deal about it. You just don't want to see that recur, certainly with any regularity, but definitely not when the stakes are highest.
Dollars up, callers up, and whenever you're on the show, ratings up as well.
Whoa.
Thomas, thanks for this. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, boys. Have a good weekend.